back to Realize Your Potential with Mike and Travis. We are super grateful to have all of you guys join us last week for our Hustle and Grind kickoff, which was our live across all our social media. We really appreciate you joining. It was a really fun experience, so thank you for coming out and joining us last week. We are excited to kick off this series with our next guest, who is a dear friend of mine. We went to high school together, and we were like road dogs. I mean, anyone from our high school that sees this video will know we were just connected. We were always together. So he has also done some really cool things in his life as well, not just being my friend. So welcome to the show, James Goyhenetche. Thank you for joining us today. He's the creative director at CBS on-air promos. He'll tell you a little bit more about that. I know typically we would go through an introduction of the guest, but I think as part of Hustle and Grind and as part of the series, part of his story is going to really talk about hustle and grind. And so how he got from point A to point B will be really intricate in understanding how to take all of the things that we've talked about throughout the series of identifying your passion and then moving that to getting your mindset in the right place, asking for the right help, strategy and planning, and then taking that plan, putting it to action, and being able to grind and hustle and get through it and execute. So I think I want him to go through his story and tell you a little bit about that. But before we pass it off to him, Mike, tell the people what they got to do. Tell them what they got to do.
Subscribe, comment, like, and James, thank you, man. Thank you for blessing us with your time. We're really appreciative. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to share about some of my experiences of the hustle and grind of where I got to in my career. I'm really proud of where I've gotten to. I'm a creative director at CBS, and we do the promotions for all of our entertainment. I work on a few shows. Like right now, I'm on Bull, All Rise, NCIS Los Angeles.
Nice.
I'll be assigned to CSI that's coming back. And so anything that you see on air or online or social or Instagram, I'm sort of leading the creative behind any kind of content we push out there to drive viewership. So it's a lot of fun. Wow. The job's really, it's ups and downs. Like it could be stressful. There's a lot of pressure to, make sure we're really getting the viewers, and we're competing against like Netflix and Amazon
right
now.
Yeah.
But we have our customers. We know who we're catering to on CBS, and we go after them, and we try to make our shows look great as best as possible, and we have a lot of fun trying to do it. Before I start, though, I do have to try to embarrass Travis a little bit. This is off the cuff, Travis. I have a little something here. There's us being tough guys. All right, and then beginning our career. There's me and Travis.
Oh my goodness!
Walking down the aisle to graduate.
Oh wow!
So
wow.
There you go.
Wow.
Us beginning our pivoting, right? Like, because that's the beginning of where you decide what you want to do when you grow up. Like, that's high school. You're like leaving and you're ready to go. It's the beginning of pivoting. And that can happen at any point of your career when you're ready to start something new. But I think it's like identifying what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? What are you excited? What do you like? What are you good at? And for me, I knew I wasn't good enough to play sports. My DNA wasn't a football player, but I always thought, if I could be involved with sports and I thought television, because I like sports, I like watching sports, I would be happy. I didn't have to become the president of ESPN, although I would, head towards that. But even if I wasn't, at least, if I wasn't super successful, at least I would be doing what I like to do. And so it didn't matter how much money I made, I would be happy. What I didn't realize then was that passion would drive that success. So, but yeah, there's a pivot because I didn't end up in sports, but I still end up in television. And so, yeah, early on in my career, I sort of made that step towards wanting to get into sports and television. I had my first internships in a news department in San Francisco in the sports department. And I did that for free. And I think that's like initially how you kind of set yourself with the hustle part of it is, what are you willing to do for free? And so I, had an internship. But having one internship, I didn't feel was enough because everybody had an internship. So I had to have two internships. So I realized the job at NBC wasn't totally working. I mean, it was okay. It was filling my resume, but I wasn't going to get a job there. So I already did a pivot because I knew I wanted to get another internship. And I recognized Fox Sports would be another great place. I'd work there for free. So, but instead of writing a letter, I ended up going downtown to San Francisco and just literally knocking on the door and ringing the doorbell and asking if I could have an internship. And
they were probably like, "This dude is crazy. What the heck? What is going on?"
Pretty much. And after like 10 or 15 minutes, they brought me upstairs, and it turned into another little internship. And that little internship actually got me my first paying job. So I started building my resume a little bit in college and having some things. So I was trying to set myself so outside of college, somebody's looking at my resume. They're like, "Oh, he's done some things. He's even worked. He's had 2 internships. He has a little production experience." And then I really felt like my pivot was heading into that real sports direction when a connection of mine at NBC got me a job as a coordinator for the Olympics in Salt Lake City in 2002. And so, like, that's it. I drove from San Francisco to Salt Lake City. I'm like, if I meet somebody who says, "Let's come to New York for a job in NBC," I mean, I was ready to do whatever. And I thought that was going to be it. But when I got to Salt Lake City, they overbooked the position. And so I was devastated. I lost this job. I thought, this is it. This is where I was heading. But instead of, I could have pivoted back to San Francisco, but the hustle part of me kind of took over, and I kind of did what I did with the internship. I started just volunteering anywhere I could find somebody involved with television. So there was affiliates of Salt Lake City like ABC, NBC, CBS, and I went to all those places and volunteered. But no one was really accepting any kind of intern or even free work at that time. And then I found out there was this media center where everybody except NBC was, and they were renting out space in this building. And I got a little bit of a pass into there, and I found out ESPN was there, CBS was there, a German TV station. Anybody that wanted to have a spot was renting out space on this floor in this building. So I got in there and I started walking around, volunteering, trying to see if anybody. I went right to ESPN. I was like, "This is it. Oh, maybe I'm not going to be making it on my NBC, but this is it. The path is here." And but they weren't accepting anybody either. I made eye contact with this guy. I could tell he was interested in whatever I was selling, and I pitched him my story. It turns out he did maintenance for the building. And he's like, "Well, I don't really do anything with TV, but I could definitely use help." And I'm like, "Oh God, like maintenance? Like, what am I going to be doing?" It's almost like the stock market's crashing, and I'm like, "Buy." It's just like I just grabbed anything. And luckily, my cousin lived in Salt Lake City, so I was staying for free, so it didn't make sense to just go back home. So I was like, moving boxes, running telephone wire, setting myself for a great career as a maintenance worker. It would have been awesome, but the hardest part was, and where I was really what am I doing here? The building was right across from the Delta Center. And the reason people rented out that space was they could have roof access, so they could do a shoot up on the roof with the Delta Center behind them. So all the ice skating events, and they could report about that with the Delta Center. But to get there was snow all over the roof. And so one of my jobs to help the maintenance guy was every day I was shoveling snow, not knowing, what am I doing? I remember one point just standing on this roof, I paused for a second. I'm like, what am I doing here? So I finally got the break after a week or two of moving boxes, or a week and a half of moving boxes and shoveling snow. A family from Los Angeles, his dad and the 2 daughters, were coming to the event to visit their mother, who worked for CBS as an editor, and all 4 of them were going to go to the events. Well, the mother was so busy, she couldn't go to the events. Her friend was the secretary of the maintenance guy I was working for. She offered her the tickets. The lady said, "I can't go either, but there's this guy that's been working us for free shoveling snow. Maybe he'd like to go." So, of course, I didn't even think about, I wasn't even thinking about career. I was just excited about getting off and shoveling snow and getting a chance to go to some free events. And so it turns out the father also worked for UPN. And so he was a TV connection, but I wasn't even thinking about that. We had a great time. We talked the whole way. I drove him around to a bunch of events in Salt Lake City. They gave me free tickets, bought me lunch, and it was a great day. But at the very end, after telling him my whole story, he said, "If you're ever interested, maybe I can introduce you to some people in Los Angeles." And I was like, "I'll see you next week." So I drove down right after the Olympics from Salt Lake City to LA to meet him and see what he might offer. I did apply to a bunch of other jobs in LA, but he worked for the promotions department at UPN. The UPN was looking for a nighttime assistant. UPN was owned by Viacom. They were in the building at CBS. So I was even thinking big tentpole like ideas, like where. But all I knew was a full-time job. It was
right. You're like, this is great.
PA. Yep. But it was there was.
I'm done with this free stuff.
Totally. But there was a moment. It was like, well, this isn't sports. It was the first time where I had to. I think I was the big first pivot was. It's not sports, but I know television. I know how to edit. I've been studying this. This is what I studied at San Francisco State, television production. I can do this job. I'm good. I'll be good at it, and I'm passionate about it. And still, like the goal of maybe going back into sports and television one day was always there. But I just took it, and I was excited. I got my first full-time job out of that whole mayhem of pivoting and hustling and not knowing what to do. So it's my favorite. When you said pivot and hustle, I thought of that story. I thought that was a good one that, you keep working at it, you keep knocking on doors, you never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, I mean, it's an inspiring story. Now, I remember me and Mike, when you were first telling it, like Mike's like, man, I'm sitting here with my mouth open, right? Because it's just like from point A to point B. And you did a great job for our listeners kind of tightening it up. I mean, for the extended version, reach out to James and his LinkedIn, but he could tell you a little bit more details.
Well, there were
how hard it was.
Yeah, I'll tell you in the extended version, when I didn't get the job at NBC, there were some tears in downtown Salt Lake City as I was like, what is happening here? Like I was on the steps. I remember just going like, I was sure that this was it. It's like you're just going along. Is this going to be it? I'm sports and television. I'm going to make it. And then it's like, no. But instead of just thinking about it too much, I just, get back out there and start working it and seeing what the next step is. If this isn't it, well, where else am I going to go? So I think it's all about just, continuing to push and move and never be stagnant and continue on to that next step. And even when I got the job at CBS and I wasn't really sure, I was at UPN. Eventually, an assistant position opened up at CBS, and so someone told me, "You're like, it's sort of a lateral move." I did pivot laterally, but I thought somebody was like, "There's more opportunity at CBS. You want to head that way." UPN isn't even around anymore, so it really worked out. I was at a safer place, But so while I was there, I wasn't really sure, like, do I want to do this world? And
right, yeah.
While I'm here, let me learn it. Let me be, really get involved with this promotional stuff. And so I knew how to edit with a different software. And I was like, well, I better learn the software that everyone's on here. So while I was working the night shift for UPN, I just took the book. And for a few months, I would just like flip through the pages and sort of teach myself how to edit. And then there was also a class that was offered to people through the state, and everybody kind of took the minimum. You could take like 30 hours. It was offered through CBS with a program in California. But I read the fine print, and it said 30 hours to 210 hours. Everybody was taking the minimum. And I kept running around telling everybody, you could take 210 hours. You could take 210 hours. And everybody
probably were like,
crazy.
shut up.
Pretty much. Yeah, and nobody wanted to take all that. But so I ended up taking like the 101 class, the VFX class, the advanced effects class. So I learned a ton of editing, which made me really useful in the future because I was a much faster editor. I could turn projects around quicker. And so when I moved over to CBS, I was also starting to cut promos and trailers. And it was really hard. I didn't know what I was doing. There was times where I was really frustrated. I remember one time I was like kind of like banging my head on the table. It was hard to really work them. And so, but I kept at it and I liked it because it was a real challenge and there was a creative side to it. And so it was fun, and I would show everybody. I would show all the creative directors, all the writer-producers, and anybody who gave me notes. I would just try to implement it. And that's a lot of what our world, too, is. Like, we get notes. We have to work those notes. There's going to be a lot of feedback from many people, so I got that early on in my career, and I was really sort of open to absorb what everybody told me, what everybody thought was a good note. And I just kind of learned to make things my own and come up with my own way of editing and creating things. And eventually that passion sort of stayed with me and people saw it, and they eventually hired me on as a full-time. Well, I started off as editing, then I was as a writer-producer, and then senior writer-producer, and then I was doing all the big projects during a time we have called upfronts, where we would create like big long trailers for to sell to advertisers. So I was doing all these big projects, and then eventually I became a creative director. There was an opportunity. I wasn't quite ready. I was just on the cusp of getting my writing skills, which is another thing I really worked on. And so, yeah, I've been at CBS for 19 years. There was just always opportunities. and I never felt like I had to leave. I was sort of pivoting within, but it always felt like there was opportunity to continue to grow as long as I hustled, worked hard, stayed positive with everybody at work. And so anyway, it all worked out, and I'm still there. I'm still here, and it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, what a story. What a story. James, I was curious. James, I was curious that as you're navigating through these things, you know, your mindset has to be on point, your energy has to be on point, your drive has to be on point. One of the huge things that, if you can talk a little bit to it, with people being able to give you a chance, I would imagine building relationships with people is paramount, right? And so, I mean, you can hustle all you want, but if you're douchey, like no one's gonna give you a shot, right? Mm-hmm. So like I'm wondering, like, can you talk a little bit about the intent around relationship, or maybe just the skills that, you know, you're either intentfully trying to implement to sort of help that process, or I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think one thing people recognized that I liked to do it, that I was passionate about it. So I think people were willing to mentor me because I was very open and wanting to learn. I wasn't very good at the writing part of it early on, but I had a mentor, one of my bosses, and I wanted to just learn everything I could about, and she wanted to teach me. It's like anybody, even at work now, like people who want to learn, I'm excited to share any knowledge I can. So I think my openness and my willingness to be open to notes but just I think also it was just my I loved the job. It was a lot of fun, and so I was always very positive. So I think people enjoyed that, and it was easy. It wasn't like I was really working that hard at it. But I think that's definitely a success, because definitely a key to the success is all those people who wanted to show me and teach me, give me those opportunities. They liked me. They had to like me, or they wouldn't have done it. And I think they did because they saw my enthusiasm and my passion. So yeah, I think it always comes back to like, you got to pick something you really love to do and you want to do, and I think that passion will lead to the success or help you grow. But yeah, relationships is huge part of it.
Yeah, massive, man. And
sorry, Travis.
Well, there's so many good things about your story, like so many things that just like, wow, that's amazing. But one of the things that I hope our viewers will take back with them is, there was a point where you did all the things that we talk about from a step perspective, right? Your mindset was totally in the right place. You knew what your passion was. You seeked help. You made a plan, and you went and you did that plan, and you got to the doorstep in Salt Lake City, and all the work that you had done to set yourself up for success, boom, nothing, right? It was something was unpredictable that popped up in your face. And you had an option at that point. You could have looked at the world. Of course it was hard. And of course you had those moments where this stinks and that's tough. But you had two options at that point. Once you got through getting the emotions out and all that stuff, is I can quit, or I can try to pivot and fix something that's not my fault. It's not my fault that I'm in this situation, but I'm now in it. And if my dream and my passion is so important, what do I have to do? And so you took the principles that you developed in your plan. So you still worked your plan, which was, I'm going to volunteer my time until I get my breakthrough. And then when I get my breakthrough, I'm going to show my worth, right? You just had to pivot, taking that plan that you'd already developed and implementing it in a different way. And so I hope everyone who's listening to this says, like, if you looked at all of our videos, like, gosh, I think we're on, number 28, 6 months of doing this. And you're like, I did all of those things and XYZ popped up and it was totally not my fault, out of my control. This is a perfect example of someone who said, yeah, but. And not yeah, but in a bad way, but yeah, but in a good way. And he determined that his success would be determined by him, not by factors out of his control. And so thank you, James, for sharing that part of the story. I just wanted to highlight that because it is the epitome of hustle, grind, execution, right? Like on the wall behind me, right? It's the epitome of that, is that I've got to figure out a way, no matter what, to get to the end goal. And then when I get there, I never stop working. And so I thought that was just really, really impressive about your story. Why is my question to you, right? Like, you got a great family. I'm not saying they're not, you're not super rich or anything, but you got a great family. You could have went home. You could have regrouped and licked your wounds, tried something else. Why did you shovel snow on a roof? Like, why did you do that? Like, why?
I mean, I was asking myself that same question when I was on the roof. I guess I knew that if I went, I was a bartender, and I loved being a bartender. I was actually making more money as a bartender than I did my first couple of jobs, or first many jobs. But I guess it wasn't like my passion, but I didn't really. So I just felt like if I left, there was, I don't know, I guess maybe really I was hoping the ESPN in that building was going to notice me shoveling snow and be like, hey, look at that guy. So maybe that was the ultimate thought, that if I just kept being around it, I thought maybe there would have been a chance at ESPN. So there was sort of one little immediate thing that I guess I was kind of thinking about. But it was like, that was maybe the one thing that was keeping me there, was like maybe hoping ESPN would pay attention to me. I think at one time I did specifically shovel snow for their setup, and they didn't really talk to me or pay attention. I might have said hi and that was it. But it was like something else that came out of right field that I wasn't expecting to see by just sort of focusing on one little area. So yeah, I think it was ESPN, if that answers the quick question. But
no, it's great. I mean, you had to focus. Yeah, you had to focus, and you focused on it. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, it's all those things, and I would say the underlying thing going on also is a huge sort of sense of being courageous.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because what Travis was talking about, you can sort of you can go ahead and take that L and sort of go back to San Francisco. But I think there's also something to be said around people's ability to be courageous when they're hustling and grinding, to sort of put themselves in spots of vulnerability and like taking a chance, And so that's the other thing that came up for me, was just hugely courageous.
Well, I think, even besides, and yeah, like, thank you for that. But also, even when I was cutting the promos and trailers and trying it, I had never done it before, and it was hard. And I also had to put myself out there with people to take that feedback, because it wasn't, I should go back and look at my early work. It wasn't very good, and I had to be courageous even just to show people this. These are professionals, they're experts, they're doing a great job. I couldn't be afraid to like put myself out there and just show them, here's where I'm at. Like, I think this is fun. What do you think? But I couldn't have been shy about that. I had to put it out there. Otherwise, if I didn't, they wouldn't have recognized it, or I wouldn't have learned or made those relationships. So there was definitely a side that I had to put myself out there just to show people. But I've never been too shy. I've been always one to like, hey man, what do you think? Like, and so. Yeah, but that was definitely a key for later in my career too, just not being afraid to put myself out there. And even now, like with the work we do and anything, we have to get feedback from a lot of people and executives, and we're always talking about taking risks with our creative and trying to be bold. And so there's always we're always trying to be courageous, even now with some of the things we do. And it's not always easy, because we can, fall into the norms of doing the same things over and over again. And so it can be hard. So even today, we're still trying to be courageous.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really interesting about you is that even though you've moved up, but I don't think you've lost that still hustle and grind for what you do, because even as you talk about it right now. But my question would be, now that you're a father, you got 2 beautiful boys, you're married, how do you find the time or energy to put the hustle and grind into your career that you're going to continue to put into it, and still balance that with being, an active father and a great husband?
Well, luckily I have a great wife who does a lot of the work. So
yeah, that's smart. Smart. You're getting points right now. Right?
So yeah, I schedule a little 3:00 dog walk. We try to like get out, and I try to play with the kids as much as I can at night. Try to play with them and do where I fit in. And yeah, it's exhausting. It can be definitely tiring. They've got 11-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're a lot of energy. And right now I told them, you guys got to be quiet. I'm going to be on an important Zoom call. So they're being good right now. So after this, I'll try to be a good dad. But yeah, like I want to try to be, so definitely like, even when I was working hard and learning how to be, a good editor, and I was doing a lot of late night shifts too when I did that. I forgot to mention, but I would like stay up late and do those extra hours to do all that. It wasn't just like 9 to 5, but I knew I could do it then because I didn't have kids and I wasn't married. So I might as well put in the time now to like hustle when you can hustle. And now I have to like definitely time manage and definitely be the best I could be at work and be the best I could be at as a dad. But there's no way you could put all your eggs in either basket. You have to find the right balance. If I didn't have kids and wife, would I be a better employee? I don't know. It's hard to say. So yes, it's a challenge. Well, how do I do it? I don't know. One day at a time. And yeah, again, I'll get the wife plug. She does a lot of the work. She does everything. So yeah, I can't take all the credit. I'm focused on the work part, I guess, a little more, and she's more on the kids.
That's good. No, balance is good, and support systems.
What is your?
Good. We always talk about that, so really important.
Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, like, what do you talked a little bit about what you're working on right now, but I'm wondering, sort of, what are you shooting for in the future for yourself?
So funny. We do interviews with people, and I always ask that question, like, what do you want to be in 10 years, just to kind of feel them out. And if you had asked me. When I was a production assistant, I would say I would love to be a producer one day. And once I became a writer-producer, like, I want to be a creative director. And so now it's a little hard to say. I think immediately, and if my bosses or anybody are listening, I'm just always looking to do whatever the most important projects are, the big projects. Like if there's something that's really valuable to the company, like I'm really fortunate. So CSI is coming back to CBS. It's announced, so I can reveal that. But they put me on it, and I'm really excited. It's like going to be a big project for us. So that excites me. And so anywhere I can get my hands on the next big project that I know that's important to my bosses, that are important, that's what I want to do. I'm not thinking about like becoming the president of CBS or anything like that. It's never like that far. It's just sort of like, what's that next immediate goal? And for me now, it's just to do whatever the biggest, most important projects are to my boss. That's what I would love to do. And just to show that I can do it and that and be successful at it. And then that success and that passion seems to always work, and it'll translate to better things in the future. So whatever that is.
I love it. Well, as we're about to wrap, what are the 2 or 3 things that you can say if you're giving advice to someone who's out there looking at your career path and saying, man, that's a career path I would love to take, or just they see your career path as inspiring? What are the 2 or 3 things that you can give them that is tangible to say, here's the things that made me successful. Here's the things that got me where I am today.
Yeah.
What would you say those?
Yeah, I think, well, specifically like in any kind of television or entertainment, all those kind of worlds, I think internships are very important, at least to sort of establish yourself on your record that you're willing to do something for free. I know, like, even one of my old bosses, he was, high up executive. His son wanted to get into the business, and his son did an internship. So you can know very powerful people, but I think you still have to kind of, like, the business entertainment sort of set up that you do have to kind of start at the bottom, at least, I think, for the most part, and at least establish yourself, and then your talent, your passion will show up. So I think finding an internship, or at least, getting a production assistant type job, anything to kind of get entry level into it and start making those kind of connections. And then once you're there, again, depending on if you've got family or other situations, I think just putting your all into the position and looking for opportunities once you start. Where can you go with it, or where can you learn more? Where can you, who can you attach to that wants to teach you more? So it's just to find ways to absorb as much knowledge as possible through any little entry-level position. I think as to kind of start. Does that kind of answer it, I think, a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Be willing to do what other people aren't. I think that's the key to success, right?
The first promo that I cut, one of the writer producers, great guy. There was a really a very annoying thing you had to do in the Avid to make the promo work. Basically, it was a Survivor buff. You were selling the Survivor buffs, and you had to animate out the color of the buffs every frame. And he didn't want to do it. And he's like, do you want to do it? And I was like, of course. So that was my first spot. It was a 10-second spot. And it took me like a week to like animate out every single little frame. But I was so excited, man, when that 10-second spot aired. It was like the greatest thing. And for him, it was just like, thanks, dude. Thanks for helping me on that spot. But yeah, I was willing to kind of pick up on what he didn't want to do. And so, yeah, I think it's looking for those kind of opportunities too, just to kind of whatever you could do to set yourself apart and grow from there.
This is fantastic, James. Just want to throw it in there. Thanks.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Mike. I'm glad you like it. I gave you my best.
Yeah, dude. It's awesome.
The picture was good, right? You like the picture? There we go.
Well, thank you so much, James, for sharing your experience with us. It has been a pleasure. It's been great always reconnecting with you. We've been able to reconnect over the past year or two, which is fantastic. But your story is really inspiring, and I think it's a great way to kind of end this series on hustle and grind, because it shows even if you do all the right steps, sometimes there are things that just get in your way that stop you from getting to your goal, and then it's like, what are you going to do about it, right? And I think your story is a perfect example of that. We are at the end of our series. We're going to do a final wrap-up episode for this season next week. So we're going to do a wrap up, kind of a repackaging, and take you down the road of everything that we heard here, and I'll highlight all of our guests, and just really also as a thank you to everybody for joining us on this journey for our first season of Realize Your Potential. So thank you so much. Like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week for our weekly wrap up. Talk to you soon.